Airing on Asheville FM 103.3 LPFM in Asheville, this is The Final Straw Radio, a weekly anarchist and anti-authoritarian broadcasts and podcast emanating out of occupied Chalagi land in southern Appalachia. We bring you voices and perspectives from projects and struggles all around the world, and you can find our archives, transcripts, ways to follow us and support us at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org. This week, we're sharing two segments with you. First up, an interview submitted by audio comrades in Italy about the struggle against the cementization of the city of Bologna and the defense of Don Bosco Park from the expansion of university, highways, the whole urban landscape, which is threatened without the input of the residents so that the city can move a school rather than renovate it. This struggle, including the occupation and defense of the park, represents an innovation in urban struggles in Italy, which consciously takes inspiration from the struggle to stop Cop City in so-called Atlanta, and the activities of park defenders have forced the left-leaning municipal government and mayor to temporarily suspend the cutting of trees. Then you'll hear Bernard Jemison, an incarcerated activist held in Holman prison in Alabama, talking about conditions inside the ADOC, the Alabama Department of Corrections, as well as recent calls for prison strikes in the state by the Free Alabama movement and their outside supporters, and his views on the demands being made. The demands that we mention are the following. 1, a bill to repeal the Habitual Offender Act be on the table. 2, civil class action litigation for parole. 3, parole bill on the table. 4, need to abolish life without parole and create an avenue for juvenile offenders. 5, no more nitrogen gas executions. And 6, stop selling prisoners' organs. So we talked about all that and more in this conversation.
I am Mattia. I'm a researcher in Bologna and I live here in San Donato, the neighborhood where the struggle of the park is taking place. To give a general background, there is a project to cut down a small park in this San Donato neighborhood in order to move a school. Instead of redoing it or fix it, they want to destroy the school and build a school in the nearby park. This is in the general framework of a big number of new projects, urban projects, street projects, highway projects in the first neighborhood outside Bologna. Bologna is a small city, like 500,000 inhabitants. It's projected to grow in the next years. They want to build new houses, new streets, new highways nearby the city center. So before 3 kilometers from the city center. And so there is a project of a new tramway, a lot of project of new neighborhoods, new buildings, and a big project of enlarging the highway, because this would help not only the bigger flow in cars in the city, but also on a national level, because Bologna has a very important position with respect to logistic flows of merchandise and people. So what is happening in San Donato is that for some months now, a group of residents of the neighborhood has decided to move against this project. So they started with signatures, with articles on the newspapers, with small events in the neighborhood. And a group of students, younger people and others decided to join this struggle. At first, it was just, I don't know even English, you can say consensus struggle. Try to influence the public opinion about the unsatisfaction about this project. And at the end of January, the municipality tried to start the project. So they arrived to start a building site. They put their fences up. And I would say that this was the moment when something new started, because some fences went down. They were totally not prepared to it, because there were only workers and some vigili urbano, which are less than police. I don't know how to translate this in English. And so they couldn't start the building site this morning. from there is a presence of people inside the supposed building site that doesn't allow the building site to happen. This has grown. There was a small house at the beginning, and then now there are places on the trees and a lot of tents right now. There is people staying there during the night, during the day, and the park, which was already alive, has acquired new life that stays there. The new jump in the mobilization was last week, Wednesday, when they tried to eject the people staying there and start the works at the same time, because they realized that it's impossible because of the shape of the park. It's really impossible to try to put the fences one day and start the works the day after. People would come in the night. So they tried to start the works at the same day. And there was this really strange also for kind of mobilization and fight against the police. They pushed us away a lot of time. At the same time, because of the shape of the park, we succeeded in encircling them again 1, 2, 3 times. They cut down like 4 trees, 5 trees. But at some point there was a breach in the police defenses, and some people went up the next trees that was supposed to be cut down. And so at the end, after like 6 hours, they had to say it is not possible to do this way. It's also unsafe. And they stopped. And this was the moment when really we had the perception that what we did for the 4 months before was at some level succeeding. 2 nights after that, really bad thing happened during the night, because there was high school students started to not only be there for the mobilization, but also be there during the night, so staying at the park. And one of them was just nearby the park and tried to go to escape in the park, but he was arrested and was moved outside the park. They used the taser on him, and they used the pepper spray, they beat him. And this was really another thing that moved the city, moved the movement in the high school. And so the day after, during all the day, there was people just outside the judicial palace. People stayed until his liberation. His arrest was confirmed, but he was liberated. We had the strong perception that the mobilization had 2 small victories. And this was confirmed by the move of the mayor, which is a left-leaning mayor from the Democratic Party, and did something which is quite interesting, because in some sense he conceded that there was a victory. He said, I want to meet the committee which is protesting against the project, and I want to meet especially all the people that started this mobilization. But in this way, he kind of, by conceding that there was a problem, conceding that he wanted to restore dialogue, it is also like stopping the momentum that we gained the past week. Bologna is a student city, but this neighborhood is not a student neighborhood. So it's the first periphery of the city, so really nearby the city center, like 500 meters, 1 kilometer at the most. And but the neighborhood is more popular, I would say, and is inhabited by people which live there since lots of time. While a lot of neighborhoods in the city, also nearby neighborhoods, are inhabited by a lot of students. And when we think of Bologna as a city with a lot of social movements, political movements, we must say that a lot of movements are driven by the student composition and the younger composition, which is not, in most cases, originary from Bologna. And this is an interesting stuff, because also when we think at the 70s, we have to think that the big explosion, the autonomy explosion that took place also in Bologna, was driven by this younger composition, while the Communist Party, which has almost always governed this city since the Second World War, found and find today also its force in the more in the Bolognese people, in the people that live in the city, in some neighborhoods which are historically relied to the party, even after the change of name, even after the change of brand, I would say, because the Democratic Party of today is the Communist Party. There is a continuity of the organization, even if there is a discontinuity in the name. Historically, in these neighborhoods, the welfare was good. The way the party was able to have a dialogue with the population was good. This school that now they want to move originally was a very interesting project of urban organization that was made having a dialogue with the population, with the pedagogists, with architects. Was really interesting how during the 70s and the 80s the party decided to operate in its neighborhood, listening to the people. Nowadays, the consensus to the party in this kind of neighborhood has totally dropped. The urban organization is totally driven by the money coming from the European Union in order to renovate the city. The basic idea is to open more and more projects in order to control more and more money in order to expand the city, which is considered to be too small. So at some point the contradiction exploded, which typically is not this kind of this kind of struggle, but this fight is also inhabited by younger people, by people not from this neighborhood, by students, by people that circulate in the social struggle in the usual sense, so post-social centers, post-student movements. And we are experimenting like the superposition of people from Bologna and people not from Bologna, and usually younger, trying to do things at the same place with different frameworks, but trying a way to be at the same place. The discourse about the use of force, the discourse about the use of land occupation, or tree occupation, is like something that goes on and on every day, but it's kind of working because the contradiction allowed it to compose in an interesting way. There are a lot of projects like this that moved the population to and made a lot of small committee of inhabitants criticizing the mayor for this project in different parts of the city, in different neighborhoods. And I would say that the project of the highway, the Passante, is the biggest one, the one that is the example for them all. But there are cutting tree projects or new building projects, or there is this tramway which is destroying some of neighborhood. So there are a lot of things, and the interesting things is, in my opinion, why in this neighborhood this kind of bigger force, had some success, because elsewhere we see a lot of critiques even before this year, but the struggle doesn't reach a threshold point. And I don't know exactly which is the threshold point, but I would say that a strange alchemy between people which is used to some kind of practice, or which looked at some kind of practice because of its political framework, its political mentality, and people which inhabit a particular place with a strong sense of rooting in that place took place. This strange alchemy took place. And people from social movements as not such a rooting, such a place where they are rooted in anymore. Because there are no more social centers, occupied social centers in Bologna. There was a strong repression against the movements in the last years. And there were less and less, I would say, social movements that that give energy to the more organized militants. So what happened is really that it's different to see where the political militants are rooted in. The places, real places, with the real rooting, with the real knowledge of the neighborhood relations are very few. On the other side, people from the neighborhood, people rooted in this neighborhood, people with the social knowledge of really the what happens nearby, doesn't have this framework of practices, not only framework of practices, but also habitude to look at the political struggle and their strategies. For example, nobody really in Italy has tried to occupy the trees. It's the first time, but for younger people is more natural to look at what happens outside, what happens in Atlanta, what happens in France, what happened in Germany, and say, okay, at the Don Bosco, the park we're talking about, it would be intelligent to try to occupy the trees. People from the neighborhood, older people that in some cases never did political militants in their lives, it's strange to think something like that. But at some point, the alchemy was really that there was this perception that we were mutually convergent, mutually compatible, and that there was some power originated from this encounter. The question I would say is that if we are able in this moment after the opening of the mayor, if we are able to use the power of this encounter to generalize it, to try to do it in other neighborhoods, to try to do it for other projects. Because if not, we have the feeling that the time for such an expensive emotional and physical level, the time is against us. Right now we are in a strange and new position because we had this week that I think was a winning week. Even there was this terrible thing that happened to the student, and we lost 5 or 7 threes. It was anyway a very interesting week, a powerful week. And right now there is this move of the mayor that is opening a dialogue. And so we have a strange thing that we have to concede some dialogue, because it would broke the alchemy if we don't concede any dialogue at all. The older population, the population which is more rooted in the city from they were born, wouldn't understand if there was no dialogue at all. At the same time, we have to know that this dialogue is bullshit. This dialogue is only a way to make us look as powerless as everybody else. It is also like stopping the momentum that we gained the past week. And so my feeling is that in some sense we had the highest momentum of the struggle last week, and now we are in a kind of moment where we have to think. The discourse is in this moment circling around this thing, what is the true democratic dialogue in this city, but we know that in 2 or 3 months at most, the mayor is trying to come back at the place when he thinks there are less people there defending it. So this is the situation. We had these small victories, but we have to think strategically now what is that is happening, how this democratic discourse framework is gonna be a problem for us. And so the people that is circulating at the struggle is probably the most interesting thing, because the struggle, as I said, started from a group of people living in the neighborhood, old people living there since a lot of years. We have to try to reach what is happening in general in the city, not through the dialogue which was installed by the mayor, but some other kind of talking, some other kind of encounters. And there is this possibility because there are cutting tree projects and building projects and new street projects everywhere. Because what is happening in this particular neighborhood, so the unsatisfaction of the population, the feeling that you're not listened, is everywhere. But at the same time is not so easy, because what happened was alchemy, something that is not clear why it worked. There was even, I think, luck in some specific situation. For example, the first time the fence went down was really interesting how it happened, because there were some people more used to a direct confrontation with the cops, but also people that were not used at all. And there were cops, but they are not real cops. It's really strange to say this, but they are kind of cops which cannot really beat you. And so at some point what happened, there was a kind of situation that allowed that it was easier. And at the end of the day, the people, even people that were not at all used to the use of force, said, okay, well, this is okay, because it stopped the building site for today. And so this is also luck, I think. And we have to search for this kind of situation in other part of the city, because the fact that the building project, the new urban project, are catalyzing the unsatisfaction of the population is something which has built up for quite some time, because it kind of synthesizes the unsatisfaction with a lot of things that structure your life, and everybody feels that are decided elsewhere, decided in a sphere which is totally different. I would make an example. May seem strange, but it's not strange. It makes sense to me. So there is at the same time that everything is happening, that everything I described is happening, there is this controversy in Bologna, because the mayor put the speed limit on a lot of streets. A lot of streets are nearby the city center, in the first periphery. And this is why it does that, because it's in the green brand of the city, because it's a way of telling people to use their car less. It's a way of preparing people to different organization of the street traffic and so on. But this is a lot of people which is with us in the struggle against the destruction of the park. A lot of people which feel the fact that the administration it put no attention on the green spaces in the city, the parks, the trees, everything that makes the neighborhoods better. The same people say this 30 kilometers per hour is bullshit. These things is not green. These things is against us. So there are kind of two sentiments that usually are thought separate, but which are the ecological sentiment and the I want to use my car sentiment. And the common ground here is the fact that both measures are thought as something which is really coming from up, organizing small things in your life, things that are really nearby you, physically or emotionally or in the organization of your life, because the time that you pass, that you stay in your car is something that is really, for people that use car to go to work, is something that you can not do it, and it drives you mad, okay? And I think that the common guide that we can find is really this, that people, different kind of person are searching for subject where this unsatisfaction about the structuration of their life can precipitate in a criticable issue, something that they can fight against. And so it's not surprise at all when you encounter people that at the same time want to defend the Don Bosco Park and says that the ecological discourse of the mayor is bullshit. And we have to say, this mayor is one of the best in making a green discourse. He's a young mayor of the party, so is not is less bullshit than other, I would say. It's green framework for the city, but people are against it because they feel and at the same time they are against the cutting of the trees, because they feel this common unsatisfaction with the strong organization of their lives, their living places, and so on. And it's more strange for younger people, which come from a militant background and from a much more organized political discourse, to see the link between these two struggle, I would say.
The Final Straw is a proud member of the Channel Zero network of anarchist podcasts, and here's a jingle from another member of CZN.
Need ordering principles.
12 Rules for What is a podcast about fascism and the far right from the perspective of the left. It's obviously great stuff, but don't take our word for it. Here is a word from our sponsor.
I'm Jordan Peterson. Now that I have been injected with the anti-fascist super soldier serum, I renounce all my rubbish beliefs about hierarchies and the distribution of sex, and dedicate my life, my soul, to the 12 Rules for What podcast.
So that's 12 Rules for What? A podcast about the far right. Get it anywhere you get your podcasts.
12 Rules.
So would you please introduce yourself to the audience with whatever name, gender pronouns, location, or anything else you want to tell the audience about yourself?
My name is Bernard Jemison. I'm currently incarcerated at Holman Corrections.
And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the facility, about what the conditions are like. I know that you've participated in some TikTok videos in the past and you've written about conditions, but if you could just kind of highlight some of what people may not expect, or something to kind of paint a picture for people about the conditions there.
Are you referring to this particular prison or my prison experience?
Either. If you want to, I was thinking about Holman, but if you want to talk more widely about your experience, that's welcome.
Holman is a small institution that only has one population dormitory here, besides death row, and the population is about 170 guys incarcerated here. It doesn't have the problems that other institutions have, other than I think it's a condemned prison. What I mean by condemned, it's so small because 4 of the major population dormitories were shut down due to piping issues, plumbing issues. The water isn't operated. It isn't functioning. So they had to shut down 4 major dormitories, which house maybe about 1,000 guys. And so it's a small institution. You have death row. You have one regular population that holds life without life sentences, and even up to the lowest 20-year sentences. So it's still a maximum security prison. Living conditions here, I would say for the most part, it's better than other places, but it's still extremely poor. We don't have a cafeteria area, well, we have a cafeteria, but a kitchen, but there's no running water, so that has issues. They can't serve the food here. We got to get our food from across the street at another institution. They are delivered over here, so that's one of the issues. If you had to point out issues here at Holman, and as other places, like I say, is not so bad compared to other institutions in Alabama. It's a very small prison with a lot of elderly people.
Yeah, and is the situation with elders in the prison? So in the state prisons, I was reading from an article, more than 7,000 people are older than 50 years old, and about 2,700 are older than 60 years old. I guess with folks that are on a life sentence, like that's just an increasing thing that folks are going to see. What kind of medical opportunities do people have in this aging community?
Well, there are a number of medical issues here and that I've addressed since I've been here, and where the guys are not getting the proper help that they need. Like, for example, one guy in my dorm has 5 hernias in his stomach. He's had those hernias in his stomach since 2015. I did a video or two about it and trying to request the medical administration to help him and help relieve him of that. And it hasn't done much good. Just so that he won't remain in that state of condition as he has been for 9 years now, and it's caused severe complications. They had to give him medicine every day to make sure that his bowels move and other things, because those hernias are all up in his torso area, and it's causing all kind of discomfort. And other guys who are older, cancer patients who are not getting treated or getting adequate treatment as they should. Just a number of medical health issues that the ADOC, I think they are trying to save money as opposed to spend money and treat these cases when they can let the guys be as they are and save less money from what I see. And that's the same practice at other institutions. They don't resort. They try to limit less money being spent on guys as possible for medical issues as opposed to treatment problems.
Yeah, I've talked to folks in the past in the Alabama system who have described the policies of Kay Ivey as one of austerity, where basically the government is cutting off funding, whether it be for staff or for facilities, for medical treatment, for food quality, for cleanup or upgrades of facilities, and just kind of, it seems like holding, well, not just it seems like, the kind of holding the population hostage in order to give arguments that look, these facilities just aren't up to snuff. We need to build new prisons and get contracts and big spending for new prisons. Does that seem like a motivator there? Is that how people understand it?
Yes, it does. And I didn't quite hear the full question, but yes.
Yeah, just kind of, the question of if it seems like an intentional thing from the state government so that they can get contracts to build new expensive facilities rather than upkeep the existing ones.
Oh, exactly. It's like one politician says, putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. The new prisons won't eliminate the problems, won't resolve the ongoing problems of what's going on, drug overdoses, overcrowding, the violence, and all the killing. It won't resolve it. Suicide, because as long as guys living in a state of hopelessness, it will never be corrected. So building these new prisons won't address the medical, especially not medical issues. And I don't know why would they invest $1 billion in this new company, We Care. And they say it's a new company, but the same personnel. Just imagine having a new company, but you got the same nurses, the same personnel, the same tactics, the same practice, which is medical neglect, save money. So they practicing the same things, but they allegedly enter into a $1 billion contract for supposed to be better medical treatment and conditions, and it just ain't happening.
Are there programs available, either educational opportunities, continuing education, personal, wellness classes, anything like that available?
Not here at Holman. Holman doesn't have trade school, GED, it doesn't have anything. It does offer where you can get certificates in anger management and mental health counseling classes, but educational, trade, anything like that, they don't provide that here at Holman.
Yeah, I guess when someone has a life without parole sentence, I don't know if the state just considers it that it's not a good investment or something like that in that instance, but it kind of denies the fact that these are human beings and being locked in.
They can get a trade and a GED, but life without guys have to pay for it on their own. There's no scholarship for that. They have to actually pay the cost of like attending school in the free world. So if they want to trade with life without, you have to actually pay for it on your own.
Do you have a life without parole or a life sentence?
I have a life sentence with parole.
Oh, okay. How, being in Holman in a place that doesn't have any programs, that seems like that would negatively affect your capacity for actually getting seen by the parole board as whatever, bettering yourself or whatever words they would use for it in order to win a parole, right?
Yeah, because you know they don't offer those opportunities other than mental health classes, and that could be a disadvantage when you are due for parole. Now, the parole board does know the name of each program or programs that are available to the prisoners, and they do take that into consideration that there are none. But that still should cause the administration to bring programs to drug programs, crime bill programs. But that being hard to do because, like I say, it's a condemned prison that only has one population dormitory due to the water pipes being completely damaged and shut off, except for the pipeline that runs to my dorm. So it's just a crazy situation and unfortunate, and the maintenance issues are preventing really other rehabilitative opportunities for us.
Yeah. Did you say that there's another, is there actually a housing facility that's across the street where food is prepared, or is that like just a laundry and like infrastructure thing?
Yes, another prison across the street prepares food and laundry. So when we want to get our clothes washed, we send it and it goes on a truck and goes across the street to this other facility, which is Fountain. When we want to get our meals, they come on a cart on the back of a truck. Just imagine that. They put our food in these luggage-type carts, and they load them on the back of a truck and bring them over here. And they may be covered up inside of the containers, but still they on an open back truck, a truck that has no covering on it. In other words, there's no sanitary way in delivering our food from across the street to over here. It's absolute. It's kind of absurd.
Yeah,
it's very crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to talk about. So when I've spoken to folks at Donaldson, they've talked about how they've seen changes over the last decade with the defunding of staff and COs, creating the space for gangs to fill some of the management of the day-to-day operations inside of the housing units. I don't know if that's a thing that you've seen or if that's something that contributes to violence, or if you want to talk about that at all.
Well, they actually increased their pay raise. It's up now. They can start y'all with $56,000 a year working in the maximum security. The problem is why they so short on officers is because so many officers have been arrested for either drug smuggling or assaulting an inmate. A host of officers they have losses is due to criminal activity, and that's why they are so short. And having so few officers in the play, that the inmates have taken advantage of that, we have to patrol ourselves. We have to be our own security because there's no security provided here. And all the time, in all situations, that don't benefit all of us, because a number of inmates are murdered and a number of inmates are assaulted, and a number of inmates suffer. And with no security here to oversee everything, anything goes in Alabama prison. So they are really short on staff, mainly because of criminal activities by guards.
Yeah, and to talk about like the violence that folks inside the facilities have suffered, I was reading that as of March 15th, 325 people had died in the Alabama Department of Corrections, and it was reviewed by the federal authorities, the Department of Justice, in 2019, and found to be housing people in conditions violating the cruel and unusual punishment Eighth Amendment part of the Bill of Rights. And Alabama prisons have a 5 times higher death rate than the average of U.S. prison, and it's rising. That's incredible, and that's scary.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And those are the reasons why it's a hopeless environment. The number one reason, and I tell everybody this, is the number one reason that they're exerting the violence is you take the hope away from guys. 80% of these guys don't have life without, and they will return to society at some point. But when you decrease their parole chances, or even the ones who have shown they have rehabilitated themselves, clear records and rehabilitative programs, and you still deny them parole and set them off 5 years, there's a bigger agenda by our government officials. There's no justification in setting somebody off for parole, denying their parole, and then reviewing them for another 5 years after that, when they have shown you that they have did everything right, everything you asked them to do, and they still punish you. That takes all the little hope that you have. It takes away the hope. It increases the drug use, drug abuse. It increases the suicide. It increases frustration, which results in homicide. It does all the major damage. And I even shared that with my people who are in direct contact with our state leaders. The parole board should be investigated for what they are doing. Are they trying to hold all these dead spaces by denying people roles so that they can fill the new prison? What's the agenda? Are they trying to what are they trying to do? Gain more money by holding. We know they get paid money by housing prisoners, and now we understand through the body organs that when the guys die, they are illegally using their body organs for profit. What is the agenda behind what the parole board is doing? And that's the key question. That's what's starting all the major chaos in the Alabama prison system.
Yeah, I think that's I'm glad that you brought up the organ harvesting, because some listeners may not have heard about that, even though it did make international news. But do you want me to go into like a basic rundown of what's out there, or do you want to talk a little bit more about what's been happening with that?
Well, it was first brought to my attention by Robert Dotson. Okay, the guy that we first realized about the heart being missing, his brother reached out to me on a Thursday and told me that, and I was so shocked. I didn't post it. Nobody even knew about it, that the guy's heart was missing. The autopsy, he was having a personal doctor do an autopsy on his brother to find out the cause of death once they received the body home.
Sure.
It was about a week was stalled before the DOC even returned his body home, and his people wanted to know, hey, well, how did he die? So when he got the body, the doctor noticed that the heart was missing. But with the heart being missing, it was almost impossible to determine the cause of death. And so the guy reached out to me first. He knows my involvement in activism. He knows a lot about me and how I put myself on the forefront of these kind of issues. So he reached out to me. He didn't know where to turn to. We ended up getting him a lawyer, connecting him with all media personnel. And that story, once the media hit it, it blew up. And people were in shock that did not know. He notified me on a Thursday. I posted about it on a Saturday, and we notified all media personnel from that point on. And since then, now we know about several other cases of people having body organs missing that were returned home to their loved ones. But the story broke just recently. Like I said, I think it was in October or November. That's when the story broke, and Alabama should be ashamed of itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was found that there was also concern from the other end of, like, there was medical students were concerned at the University of Alabama about where the body parts that they were, that they were cutting up, that they were studying, had come from, and they kind of did some of the other work, corresponding to incarcerated folks and their loved ones who were witnessing this desecration of people's bodies. So it sounded like the ADOC was selling, or certain individuals, certain wardens were involved in the sale of human remains from deceased prisoners to this University of Alabama, to their medical program, so that they could use the cadavers or the parts in their program. And there's ways that people can, just like folks on the outside can determine if they want to be an organ donor. That's a decision that people can make, and that's a decision that, you know, people's families can make. But in this case, it was not even, as you described, where they do the autopsy and there's a heart missing. Nobody knows about this. There's no paperwork saying that the individual made that choice. It's utterly terrible.
And the reason why they was doing that, because the majority of the bodies who are returned home, nobody was paying an autopsy. It costs money to pay an autopsy specialist to determine the cause of death, when they was beginning to just trust whatever the DOC said. The DOC said, hey, he died of overdose, or he hung himself, or he did this and did that. Most families was just accepted because they did not think that the DOC would stoop so low as to tamper with the actual cause of death. There have been murderers, guys been murdered by the police and been told by their family the cause of death is different. But the injuries, once they got to the funeral home, the injuries, the morgue, the injuries was clearly in conflict, not agreement with what the prison officials are saying. Like one guy allegedly died from overdoses, but when his sister received his body, he had bruises all over, black eyes and everything, and head trauma, that his head then had beat with something. So, and since then, DOC lost credibility on the cause of death. People don't trust them, so families are now getting autopsies, and these autopsies are resulting in more revelation of organs being missing. Yeah. And just blowing everybody's mind. But this was a repeated practice, and there's no telling how long it's been going on. And I just thank God that he reached out to me. I thank God, the brother of Mr. Dotson, and I thank God that we had a platform to bring this issue with, along with many other issues going on occurring in the ADOC. But this was maybe the most shocking of all, that these people can be so heartless and even stalling on turning over the body. And on top of that, even keeping all the property of the victim. The last few guys that have died, a host of guys that have died, said the DOC said, hey, they don't even have property. Some that the family wanted to just receive and just have something to remember of their loved one, but they are not even turning over their property to them. So the DOC is just running, a dictatorship of a prison system, doing whatever they want to do and not caring about what happened to the guys in their custody.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds reflective of like what the Chinese government does with political prisoners, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is a different system, but just to bring it up, when I was reading about this, I also came across news in Mississippi of the so-called paupers' graves in Hinds County, where the jail there they found a mass grave, basically, that the county had stopped documenting burials in, or had not been reaching out to family members or doing any work to reach out to family members of people that had died in custody, which shows there's no chance for this sort of search for truth or accountability or closure for the family members in those instances if they don't even know what happened to their loved one who just kind of disappeared. And then, you know, but yeah, again, that's Mississippi and not Alabama, but it's just utterly dehumanizing and disgusting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So along those lines, you mentioned that there's a death chamber at the facility that you're at, and there have been demands recently coming out of the ADOC and of the state of Alabama to change certain policies, some of which reflect what we've talked about already, like the organ stealing, but also the end of the use of nitrogen as an execution method. Would you be willing to talk a little bit about those circumstances and what you've witnessed?
Yeah, they were nervous here trying to carry out an execution using that kind of chemical gas for the first time. I think it happened in January for the first time in American history. Officers were concerned. They built plexiglass over all the bars near the death row chamber that separate the guys on death row and the guys in the shift command office where the officers work at. Because it's like within 50 feet of the actual death chamber, so they wanted to block that up because they just didn't know what to expect. Really, because hearing about the chemical leak of nitrogen that leaked in this facility in Georgia the prior year, it killed several employees. So here, executing someone using the same chemical gas, they did not know what to expect. The good thing is no one other than the guy being executed, he was only affected by it. So nobody else was affected, but they did not know what to expect. The inmate population, we were very nervous, even though we are not in the actual building connected to the death chamber, and we were still nervous because we didn't know what to expect. And the guy, the doctor, the priest that was in the room with the guy the night that he was executed in January 10th, Smith, he testified of what he saw. That it went horribly wrong. It did not go right. The guy did not go to sleep as expected and then died through poisoning. He suffered. He was tortured. And he rocked himself back and forth with difficulty breathing all at the same time while he had a mass force around his head and his arms tied down. And he shook violently and all kind of forms came out of his mouth. And this is another disgrace of a tactic that Alabama is using, and it's surprising coming from a pro-life state who believes in life and promote life, that to go through the extremes and finding the way to put someone to death is like contradicts everything that every pro-life stand that they stand on. And it was just disgusting. But and I hear that they're trying to carry out another execution in the same fashion. And it's terrifying for those guys that are back there in death row, knowing that kind of torture awaits them through the use of chemical nitrogen.
Yeah. That's I'm really sorry that that's terrible. And I'm not a lawyer or a constitutional scholar, but also seems quite clearly like in violation of if people had an Eighth Amendment protection against cruel and unusual punishment, this would clearly be an instance where that would be something you could point to stop this sort of thing. But there's an utter failure in the level of the courts and governance.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I did mention it, that there's been circulating on the outside a call for a strike by the Free Alabama movement, which has been involved in the past work stoppages or calls for work stoppages. And some of these points that we've talked about, such as a change up of the parole system. In that case, one of the demands was an abolition of the life without parole status, as well as an avenue for juvenile offenders, folks that are convicted as a juvenile, to not serve life without parole, which is basically a death sentence. An end to the nitrogen gas executions and the stopping of the selling of organs. This list also that's been circulated by supporters on the outside, including the Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee in D.C. They talk about demanding a bill to repeal the Habitual Offender Act being on the table. Is that anything that you want to talk about?
Just specifically about the Habitual Offenders Act?
Yeah, I just wanted to see, going off of this list that I've got in front of me, if you have anything to say, either like personally or from experience with the other folks that you're incarcerated with, about the impacts of the Habitual Offender Act and what you'd like to see happen with that.
Oh, that Habitual Offender Act is ridiculous. Just in my dorm alone, there's so many guys that are in prison with simple, even though Class A robberies, non-violent, no injuries included, and just with life without parole, or maybe a sex case, life without parole, only because prior previous felons. And previous felons, like one guy got life without one. His previous felony is having a knife, being in possession of a knife at another prison, and that he got released from. And it counted as a felony and ended up giving him life without. So I just think from these laws, the Habitual Offender Act is not only harsh, it doesn't work, and all it does is just put people away for a not so heinous crime for the rest of their life, and so they got to die in prison. So that definitely should be looked into and reversed. It's not working. It's not reducing crime, clearly. And all it's doing is just holding up bed space for the citizens of Alabama to pay taxes just to house people for many, many, many years. And as you know for yourself, the prison age population is rising. And these people actually pose no threat to society. Some of them I know that a couple of guys here that have been here over 40 years, and older guys, and just no threat whatsoever, and they did not kill anyone. Their only crimes are based on prior convictions, which gave them habitual offender status. That gives them life without parole. So that it's just Alabama needs to rethink some of these old concepts and old policies that they still practicing that does us. It don't cause us to progress in the right way in any kind of way, and it just all it does is have us stuck back in the attitude and mentality of being tough on crime, but it's not reducing crime, and it's just not benefiting the state. And so that's my opinion on the Habitual Offender Act. Now, a couple other demands that you mentioned that, we shouldn't have to demand that the people don't fill our body areas. Some stuff should be obvious that they should not be doing. Yeah. But when you got a system like this here that's so corrupt and used to getting away with a whole lot, they got a habit of continuing to do break the law and do other things until it catch up with them. And I think right now the public is now no longer trusting the ADOC and all the sneaky things and the horrific things that they do that we didn't know about until now.
Yeah, and the fact of just to point to like the Habitual Offender Act, one article that I read compared it to what in a lot of states were the three strikes laws, right, where you get a few felonies, and as you said, it could be something that's totally nonviolent, could be like possession of a little bit of marijuana or survival crime like stealing some food or whatever, could be the thing that sends you over into this sort of funnel into life without parole because of like prior convictions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And the ADOC has been under review from the Department of Justice also. So it's not only like the citizens and community members in Alabama, but also even the federal government, as bad as it can be, has been looking at and determining that the malfeasance and corruption in this system. Yeah, like I alluded to, a group has called for work stoppages. Have you seen any sort of activity at your facility where people are engaging under that banner?
Oh, no. No facilities other than in 2022. And it did have a great effect. It showed our governors, and it posed a real threat to our governors and DOC officials who are very concerned about a work stoppage because of the effects that it has, and economic effects, and also the threat that other staff members would stop working, to actually stop working, or they would go on strike themselves. But as far as anything of that taking place here, Holman, no, not at all, or other facilities, not at all.
Do you think people are not participating or not engaging in this because they're not concerned about these issues specifically, or for other reasons like fear of repression or just not poor organizing around the terms of this, or what?
Well, as far as the inmate population, there's no unity. There's not enough unity to be an adequate strike. And the last one, which they feel that resulted in no positive result, was really discouraged the guys from ever attempting to do so again, and that's what they're saying right now.
Thank you for addressing that. It's important work that you're doing in my estimation, by talking about this, by getting folks on the outside on the page where they understand what the conditions are like. I wonder if there's any things that I didn't ask about that are concerns that you want listeners to realize that maybe they're ignorant of, concerning like what y'all are going through inside of Holman or other facilities.
Well, I'll just say, until society care more, see, our government officials here in Alabama have a set way on how they address criminal behavior, prisoners, and not only, as you can see now, treat us like we are nothing, or that we are less than human beings. I think it's a habit, it's a custom in Alabama here, to where you don't really acknowledge people as human beings who break the law. And until society holds them accountable, I think medical neglect will continue to go on. I think they will close their eyes to all the murderers, all the suicide that's occurring. I think they will continue to close their eyes to all these things if our government officials or our citizens don't hold them accountable, meaning until society really cares and to say, hey, what's going on in those prison systems need to be changed and revised, and we need to put leaders in place that will really help turn that around. Until society cares, it seems like it will continue to go on, despite the lawsuit that the DOJ has filed against the Alabama Department of Corrections that starts trial, I think, in November. Despite all of that, people need to care more, because when you have a person that sits in this environment, go through this war type atmosphere, and 80% of the population will be released at some point, and they have to go back into society, it does society harm. It doesn't benefit society, it hurts society. Because this place should be a place of correction, and guys are not coming here being corrected. And that's a major problem. And until they provide adequate correction and reward good behavior, it will hurt society as a whole. And society needs to understand that. This is why the crime rate isn't being reduced. Out of all the being tough on crime standards here in Alabama, it will not be until you start rewarding decent behavior. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's very well put. How do you have any thoughts about how people on the outside can get more engaged in actively supporting folks like yourself that are speaking out about the conditions? You don't have to have an answer,
I mean, I think voting is good. Media exposure is good, and sharing the news and spreading what's going on in Alabama prison, because it has shocked a number of people. I got TikTok videos that have been viewed millions of times, and not toward just people here in the United States, people worldwide, and people are shocked. So bringing people aware of just how bad the situation is, I think others can help by spreading it also. Spreading it to our government officials, our leaders, people that don't understand, people that don't know, church leaders, people that are in positions of power to bring about change and stuff like that. I think just spreading the word is the most effective thing that people can do to help bring awareness.
Are there any, do you want to tell people, if you've got a TikTok channel, what it is, or ways that they can find more of your thoughts in the future? Or are there any other incarcerated educators, influencers, media personalities, however you want to put it, that you think that do a good job that folks should listen to?
Oh, they can go to Truth Behind Bars. That's my Facebook page. TikTok page is Prison Dash Talk, but the dash is at the bottom, not in the middle. Underscore Prison underscore Talk with an S, and they can see all the videos that I've been posted over the years. And absolutely horrific, and it's eye-opening at the same time.
Any other channels you want to shout out that do a good job?
Hope Dealers does a good job. Alabama Prison Reform Advocate Groups, all throughout the state. I think there's several of them, and all the news journalists, Beth Shelburne, Chad Marks, people who really cover this story, this horrific story in Alabama, and help bring awareness to, and highlight the things that's going on, and just tip my hat to them and some of the people in my inner circle who are my diehard supporters. I just thank God for them and everybody else that's put forth effort to bring about change.
Mr. Jemison, have you faced threats or danger for speaking out?
All the time.
Is there anything in particular that folks on the outside can do to keep you safer when that happens?
No, I'm a Christian, man. I believe in the power of prayer. I think prayer is the only thing that saved my life. The only reason why I'm still alive, I truly do. I don't think it's no intervention of mankind, even though a lot of people in high positions have stepped in to make sure I was okay. Like I went on a 17-day hunger strike in August at Kiev prison, and it got the lieutenant governor's office attention. She sent 2 investigators to come and check on me, and I appreciated that. And but I think only by the power of God that I think that I'm even alive. And despite all the threats and all the hate and opposition that I face from the guys in here as well as the officers and all of that, but most of the guys know that I'm doing the right thing and I'm standing up for what's right. And I think that's the main thing that has me. I'm still breathing right now.
Well, is there anything else you want to say before we close up this chat?
That's it. Appreciate the interview.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time and being so quick to respond. And those are great answers. And I hope this gets far and people hear your voice. And now some words from anarchist prisoner Sean Swain.
What you say, what you say, what you say, what? We're caught like a fly!
Over half a century ago, colleges and universities became hotbeds of social change and political struggle. A lot of things converged in the 1960s to make that a reality. The Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War, and the availability of higher education to the children of the working class. Back then, much of the protest activity involved both students and faculty. And so, at least early on, the university did little to obstruct or intercede into the student-led actions. Also, there seemed to be an unspoken policy that universities were a kind of public space, a commons, an area where the free competition of ideas and political discourse could thrive, even if the ideas and discourse were of an orientation or of a tangent that conflicted with the sensibilities of those running the universities. As simply a practical matter, it's kind of hard to claim exclusive ownership of any space that has the same root word as universal in its very name. Of course, in those instances when the universities did seek suppression, as in Kent State and Jackson State, things didn't end well. Those events have left literal bloodstains on U.S. collegiate history. We fast forward, and after decades of college students caring about nothing but the cost of tuition and the accumulation of student debt as the great injustice of the world, something has awakened. As of April 28th, 48 colleges and universities report protest activities on their campuses related to the genocidal war waged by Israel in Palestine. It started at Columbia University with a campus occupation, and when police came in and engaged in the tactic of mass arrests, the heavy-handed and repressive response seems to have had an effect that is the opposite of what was intended. Rather than stifle student opposition to the war on Palestine, repression caused opposition to metastasize. The police response has been increasingly more irrational, resorting to tasing and pepper spraying nonviolent students. Mass arrests now occur across the country, the most recent being at Washington University in St. Louis, where more than 80 were arrested, and Northeastern, where more than 100 were arrested. Northeastern University administrators allege the protests and occupations are being carried out by professional organizers. So far, they've offered no paychecks as proof. This echoes earlier comments by New York City Mayor Eric Adams, who claims the occupations are led by outside agitators, seeming to imply that those with a radical agenda originate from someplace other than Brooklyn or Queens, because New Yorkers are so conservative. Interesting that the ruling elite cannot fathom that the inception of all of this is that people of conscience cannot stand idle as thousands of children are slaughtered, and those in charge must instead attribute disruption to today's equivalency of Soviet-paid pinkos hiding in the bushes. Perhaps even this commentary is secretly sponsored by the Chinese Communist Party. I wish it was. I could use the yen. I think there's a significance to government and university officials believing that protests are attributable to outside forces. And I think it relates to a larger question. That larger question is, who owns the universities? In one sense, the universities are a commons. They are, in some degree, public, and so they are jointly owned. But in a more practical sense, the universities are a business, structured on a business model, producing a service to its customers. From a public commons perspective, everyone jointly owns the university, and so camping there is free speech. Not so from a business model, the mindset of the university administrators. By that mindset, education is business, and all this camping is interfering with business. But let's unpack that. Who are the customers? The direct customers are the students who pay tuition. And doesn't tuition include more than just the knowledge in the classroom? Doesn't tuition include access? Access to the services, access to the physical space. When students pay tuition, aren't they, even if only temporarily, purchasing stock in the institution itself, becoming part owner of the social and educational space? If that's the case, then students have purchased access to the commons, to those carefully maintained grassy spaces with the benches around them, just as much as they've purchased access to the dorm rooms. I doubt any of the contracts demand promises from the students that just because the dorm rooms are available, they won't sleep outside under the stars. I doubt the universities impose no camping clauses upon their students, upon their customers. And so what we witness is not just a clash between students on one hand and universities and cops on the other. What we are witnessing is a clash between two very different conceptions of what the universities are, what they do, and what they mean. The officials see the students disrupting the proper business of the universities. The students see themselves carrying out the proper business of the universities, changing the world for the better. They see the university administrators and cops trying to stop the students from carrying out that proper business, which they know to be far more important than the bean counting that obsesses those in charge. Whose university is it? I'm reminded of striking longshoremen who stood locked arm in arm confronting a line of armed cops. The police captain asked the strikers, "Who's in charge here?" In unison, the strikers responded, "We are." In the heated exchange that followed, the strikers told the cops, "You can shoot us to death, but you can't shoot us back to work." Universities are slowly learning who's in charge, and they're learning they can't arrest and shoot the students back to class. They owe the students full disclosure of university resources and divestment from Israel. And that's a starting point. Who's in charge here? As a general rule, university presidents, if you're asking that question, you're not. This is anarchist prisoner Sean Swain from the Super Duper Uber Mega Ultra Hyper Turbo Multi Maxi Max in Youngstown, Ohio. If you're occupying the campus, you are the resistance.
You can still write Sean at his new old new again address at Sean Swain number A243205 OSP Youngstown 878 Coatesville Hubbard Road, Youngstown, Ohio 44505. You can find his past writings, updates on his case, hear his past audio, find out how to get his books, plus ways to contribute to his legal defense fund at seanswain.org.
This is The Final Straw Radio. The show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us with questions and suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net or thefinalstrawradio@protonmail.com. If you'd like to use any episode for your project or radio show, feel free to do so. Just send us an email to let us know. If you care to, you can send us letters at TFSR, P.O. Box 6004, Asheville, North Carolina, 28816. Programming support is brought to you by Firestorm Books. Located at 1022 Haywood Road in West Asheville, Firestorm is a bookstore and social movement space owned by its workers, in operation since 2008. Their event calendar and complete catalog of books can be found online at firestorm.coop.